At 38 years old, Catherine Sullivan seemed to have everything she'd ever wanted. A successful real estate agent in the coastal town of Westbrook, Connecticut, she specialized in high-end suburban homes, the kind of properties most people only dreamed of owning. She lived with her husband, Robert Sullivan, in a spacious colonial-style house on Meadowbrook Drive, surrounded by manicured gardens and tall oaks that shaded the quiet neighborhood. Robert, now 41, worked as a senior financial analyst at a large insurance firm in Hartford. His steady salary, along with bonuses and benefits, provided the family with security, while Catherine's growing reputation in real estate added comfort and prestige. Together, they raised 2 children, Emma, age 12, and Tyler, age 9. Outwardly, they were the picture of success, a family others admired, living what seemed like the perfect suburban dream. But beneath that polished surface, Catherine's world was slowly unraveling. Over the years, the emotional connection in her marriage had faded. Friends would later recall how Catherine often spoke of feeling invisible, how Robert's attention seemed fixed more on spreadsheets and investments than on her. As her 40th birthday approached, she began to wonder if she had traded love for stability. Her career exposed her to couples buying new homes, smiling, excited, and deeply connected, and each handshake, each showing, only deepened her quiet resentment of her own stagnant relationship. Then in March 2024, a new family moved into the house next door, the Morrisons. The father, James Morrison, a 52-year-old contractor, had recently divorced and relocated with his son, Daniel, a 21-year-old who had just dropped out of college. Daniel was everything Robert wasn't: young, athletic, and carefree. A former college football player, he worked with his father in construction and carried himself with the easy confidence of someone untouched by the burdens of age or responsibility. For Catherine, their first meeting was harmless enough: a polite welcome to the neighborhood, a friendly exchange of numbers, some casual advice about local services. But beneath the surface, something stirred. Daniel was charming and attentive, his conversations raw and unfiltered compared to the guarded politeness of the adults in Catherine's world. Over the weeks, their encounters became more frequent. She began offering him guidance, helping him consider new career options, introducing him to contacts in property management, and offering advice about business and life. At first, their meetings took place in public: coffee shops, small diners, quiet parks, always under the guise of mentorship. But those meetings soon grew longer, more personal. Catherine found herself drawn to his spontaneity, his youth, and the way he made her feel alive again. By early May 2024, the relationship had crossed the line. Under the pretense of showing Daniel a vacant home outside Westbrook, Catherine invited him to a property she knew would be empty. There, far from curious eyes, a new and dangerous chapter began. Investigators would later uncover over 3,000 messages exchanged between the two from May through September 2024. Messages filled with longing, frustration, and promises. Catherine wrote about feeling trapped and unloved. Daniel confessed his desire for her and his dreams of a life together. But those same messages also revealed cracks in their secret world. Catherine struggled with guilt, fear of what would happen to her children, to her career if the truth came out. Daniel, meanwhile, began to see Catherine not just as a lover, but as a lifeline, a way out of his uncertain future. He urged her to leave Robert, to start over with him. By midsummer, Catherine began to consider it. The affair had given her a sense of passion she hadn't felt in years, but it had also tied her to a young man whose impulsive nature worried her. At home, Robert had noticed the changes: her long absences, her sudden interest in her appearance, the emotional distance that filled their once familiar house. A man trained to detect discrepancies and hidden numbers, Robert quietly began his own investigation. He started small, checking her mileage, comparing the locations of her real estate listings with the hours she claimed to be working. Gradually, patterns emerged that didn't make sense. Her car traveled farther than necessary. Her schedule didn't match her clients' appointments. In August 2024, Robert found what he had feared: messages on Catherine's phone that confirmed the betrayal. They were explicit, emotional, and undeniable. The wife he had trusted for 15 years was living a double life. From that moment, the Sullivans' carefully constructed image of perfection began to collapse. After uncovering proof of his wife's infidelity, Robert Sullivan chose not to confront her right away. Instead, he moved with quiet precision, collecting every piece of evidence he could find while meeting privately with a divorce attorney. His focus was clear: protect his finances, secure custody of his 2 children, and prepare for what would inevitably become a painful separation. But the discovery that Kate's affair was with their young next-door neighbor made the betrayal far more devastating than a typical case of marital disloyalty. Every morning as Robert left for work, he saw the Morrison house, a daily reminder of humiliation and anger. The age gap between Kate and Daniel, and the closeness of their homes, turned Robert's private heartbreak into something that felt public, even scandalous. By early September 2024, Robert decided to act. He calmly informed Kate that he knew everything: the messages, the meetings, and the lies, and that he intended to file for divorce, seeking full custody of Emma and Tyler. His demeanor was detached, almost clinical. For Robert, this was no longer about love or betrayal. It was a matter of strategy and control, as if he were managing a financial crisis rather than the end of his marriage. Kate's initial reaction was defensive, denial, excuses, attempts to downplay her relationship with Daniel. When that failed, she begged for reconciliation, promising to end the affair and attend counseling. But Robert had already made up his mind. He wasn't interested in repairing what he viewed as irreparably broken. His concern now centered on shielding the children and preserving his assets. By mid-September 2024, the divorce proceedings had officially begun. Robert's attorney filed paperwork detailing evidence of Kate's affair, along with arguments that her conduct demonstrated instability and unfitness for primary custody. It was a tactical move designed to corner her legally and financially, leaving her little room to negotiate. Meanwhile, Kate's world was collapsing. Her connection with Daniel, once a thrilling escape, was now becoming a source of anxiety. The fantasy of passion and freedom had given way to tension, jealousy, and doubt. Daniel began pressing for a future together, talking about moving in and starting a new life, dreams that now felt naive and impossible to Kate. She was beginning to see the cracks in everything she'd built. Her professional reputation in real estate was slipping as whispers circulated about her affair. Clients grew distant. Friends withdrew. Even her children sensed something was wrong. Their trust in her was fading. As the legal pressure mounted, Kate's thoughts turned darker. Investigators would later find online searches made from her laptop that hinted at desperation, inquiries about accidental deaths, life insurance claims, and inheritance procedures for widows. It appeared that Kate had begun to see a terrible solution forming in her mind. If Robert were gone, she wouldn't have to fight for custody. There would be no financial division, no scandal, no court battles. His absence could erase her problems and preserve the life she feared losing. Over the following weeks, her actions became more deliberate. She and Daniel allegedly began discussing a plan, one that would make Robert's death appear accidental. The scheme required patience, timing, and secrecy. On the evening of September 28, 2024, everything came to a head. The night began like any other, calm, almost ordinary. Kate cooked Robert's favorite meal and tried to appear relaxed. She encouraged Emma and Tyler to stay at friends' homes for the night, claiming she and Robert needed to talk privately about the future. After dinner, Robert settled into the living room, unaware that his wife had already set the final stage of a deadly plan. The back door was left unlocked, not by mistake but by design. Sometime after 9 p.m., Daniel Morrison entered through that open door, stepping quietly into the Sullivan home. What happened next would turn the illusion of suburban perfection into a chilling true crime story that shocked the entire community. The violence itself was sudden and brutal. As Robert Sullivan sat in the living room, unaware of the danger moving quietly behind him, Daniel Morrison crept in through the unlocked back door. From the garage, he had taken a metal baseball bat, one that belonged to Robert's son, Tyler. With a single swift motion, Daniel struck from behind. The impact was catastrophic, but not instantly fatal. In panic, Daniel delivered more blows, each one louder, messier, harder to explain. What had been planned as a staged accident now looked unmistakably like a deliberate killing. When it was over, Robert lay motionless on the carpet. The home that once symbolized comfort and success had become a silent crime scene. In the hours that followed, Kate and Daniel set about covering what they'd done. They smashed a window to simulate forced entry, overturned furniture, and scattered drawers to mimic the chaos of a burglary gone wrong. They removed several valuables, Robert's watch, his wallet, some of Kate's jewelry, hoping to make the motive seem material rather than personal. But even before investigators arrived, mistakes were everywhere. The ransacked rooms looked too deliberate, too selective. The missing items were limited to easily traceable valuables, while many others of higher worth were left untouched. And the injuries on Robert's body, multiple concentrated blows to the head, told a story no burglary could explain. Daniel's inexperience only deepened their failure. He left fingerprints on the bat and traces of his DNA on Robert's shirt from the struggle. Tiny droplets of his own blood, invisible to the naked eye, later appeared under forensic light. When police arrived, Kate's composure immediately stood out. She recited, in precise detail, exactly what items had been taken, details no grieving spouse should have known so soon. Officers noted her calmness, her absence of shock, and the lack of forced emotion that so often accompanies real tragedy. The case was assigned to the Connecticut State Police Major Crime Squad, with Detective Lieutenant Sarah Chun taking the lead. Initially, it was classified as a potential home invasion homicide, but inconsistencies quickly began to surface. Blood spatter analysis didn't match the burglary narrative. The direction of impact, the location of stains, and the absence of defensive wounds all suggested that Robert had been attacked from behind by someone he trusted. As investigators dug deeper, a clearer picture began to form. Background checks revealed that Robert and Kate were in the middle of a contentious divorce. Witness statements and digital forensics uncovered Kate's affair with Daniel Morrison, the neighbor's son. The motive was suddenly obvious. Divorce meant financial loss, public embarrassment, and possible custody disputes. But a death, especially one that looked accidental, would solve everything. Search warrants for Kate's electronic devices uncovered extensive online research into accidental deaths, life insurance policies, and how widows could legally inherit property. The data showed coordination between Kate and Daniel leading up to the murder. Messages about timing, opportunity, and getting it done. The physical trail was equally damning. Daniel's fingerprints were recovered from the baseball bat. DNA consistent with his profile was found on Robert's clothing and in several locations inside the house. Then came the final confirmation. Security cameras from a nearby residence captured Daniel's pickup truck driving toward the Sullivan home that night and leaving less than an hour later. On October 12, 2024, police moved in. Both Kate Sullivan and Daniel Morrison were arrested and charged with first-degree murder, conspiracy, and evidence tampering. The news sent shockwaves through the quiet community of Westbrook. Neighbors who once admired Kate as a polished real estate agent and caring mother struggled to comprehend the reality that behind her suburban success lay a secret that had ended in blood. Media outlets across Connecticut seized on the case. The story had every element of a headline-grabbing tragedy. The affair between a married mother and her young neighbor, the jealousy and greed that followed, and the illusion of domestic perfection destroyed by violence. Legal experts later described the case as a chilling reminder of how passion, betrayal, and desperation can transform ordinary people into criminals. What began as an affair had spiraled into manipulation, calculation, and murder. In the end, the carefully constructed lie unraveled under the weight of forensic truth. The Sullivans' once idyllic home on Meadowbrook Drive would never again symbolize comfort. Only the haunting reminder that behind every perfect facade, there may lie a secret capable of shattering everything. Kate's co-workers in the real estate industry were stunned when news broke of her involvement in the crime. Many who had long seen her as a professional, ethical, and composed businesswoman found it impossible to reconcile that image with the cold, calculated planning behind Robert's murder. Meanwhile, Daniel's friends described him as naive and impressionable, someone easily swayed by people older and more dominant than himself. Court proceedings soon revealed the depth of the conspiracy between Kate and Daniel. Investigators presented records of their online searches about life insurance, their carefully crafted alibis, and detailed discussions on how to destroy evidence and maintain a believable cover story. It was clear that this was not a crime of passion, but one that had been meticulously planned for weeks. Robert and Kate's children, Emma and Tyler, were placed under the temporary care of their paternal grandparents as the case unfolded, struggling to understand how their mother could have taken part in their father's death. Both children required therapy to cope with the emotional devastation of losing both parents in one tragic moment. The prosecution's case was built around a mountain of physical and digital proof linking both defendants to the murder. Investigators presented a clear picture of financial and personal motives, showing that Robert's death had been the intended solution to Kate and Daniel's problems. Expert witnesses explained how the supposed home invasion had been staged and why it was impossible for the events to have happened as the suspects first claimed. Kate's defense team argued that Daniel had manipulated her emotionally, convincing her to take part in the plan without fully realizing its consequences. They painted her as a woman overwhelmed by fear, love, and pressure rather than as a willing participant in the murder. Daniel's defense, in contrast, claimed that Kate was the true mastermind, saying that her promises of money and a shared future had blinded him to what they were really doing. Despite their attempts to shift blame, the evidence showed that both had played equal roles, Kate providing access and insight into Robert's habits, and Daniel carrying out the violent act. Prosecutors emphasized that their cooperation and planning left no room for doubt about their shared guilt. After 16 hours of deliberation, the jury delivered guilty verdicts for both Kate Sullivan and Daniel Morrison on all counts, including first-degree murder, conspiracy, and evidence tampering. The weight of the evidence left no reasonable doubt. Kate Sullivan was sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole, plus additional years for conspiracy and tampering. The earliest she could ever be released would be after 6 decades, making it effectively a life sentence. Daniel Morrison received 50 years to life, with the possibility of parole after 40 years. The court acknowledged that he had been influenced by Kate, but stressed that his actions showed a total disregard for human life and destroyed multiple families. Daniel's family issued a public apology and soon left Westbrook to escape the stigma surrounding the case. His father sold their home and used part of the proceeds to create trust funds for Emma and Tyler's education and long-term care. Kate's real estate license was permanently revoked, and her former company, Premier Properties, donated her remaining commissions to victim support organizations. The firm also introduced new policies regarding employee ethics and personal conduct in the aftermath of the scandal. The Sullivan family home was sold, with the proceeds placed in trust for the children's future. Robert's life insurance policy, legally withheld from Kate due to her conviction, was also secured for Emma and Tyler's benefit. Under their grandparents' guardianship, The children have gradually adjusted to their new lives with continuous counseling and family support. The family has requested privacy and declined all media interviews as they continue their healing process. Kate Sullivan is currently incarcerated at the York Correctional Institution in Connecticut, where she attends counseling and educational programs. She has had only limited contact with her children, respecting their wishes to keep their distance while they recover emotionally. Daniel Morrison is serving his sentence at Cheshire Correctional Institution and will be eligible for parole in 2064. Reports indicate that he has expressed remorse and taken part in rehabilitation programs aimed at helping offenders understand the damage caused by their crimes. The case remains a haunting example of how infidelity, greed, and emotional manipulation can escalate into unimaginable tragedy.